Off top, treadmill was originally used as punishment. Play the music.
This is the Domonique Foxworth Show.
Welcome to the Domonique Foxworth Show. We are joined from a lair, it appears, by the great Kevin Clark. What's up, buddy?
Hey, buddy. I'm in my neighbor's basement.
All right. If you need help, you should blink or something. I don't know why you're in your neighbor's basement.
No, there was an issue with my house this morning, and I had first name drop Troy Aikman on the show, and I just wandered around. And ESPN was like, Troy Aikman is very punctual. He will probably be early.
Football player.
So I decided to wander around my neighborhood until I found a neighbor to take me in. I said, can I create content in your basement? And he said, absolutely. So shout out Dan Goldberger.
Well, you set a record for quickly name and dropping. And also, how'd it go with Troy? Was he on time? Was he early?
He was great. He was 5 minutes early.
Yeah.
He went to the south of France this summer. He's doing great. We talked about modern quarterbacking. He had all sorts of good takes you would never come up with, Foxworth, and so it was really, really good.
I'm not in competition with Troy Aikman. If you guys want to hear these mediocre takes that are nowhere as good as the takes that you're going to hear today, you can go find Kevin's show, I guess, if you want to.
This is football. We also have Mina Kimes this week.
Oh, now she.
How about that one?
We also had Mina Kimes this week.
Mina Kimes this week. And we'll have Mina Kimes every week throughout the entire football season.
All right. Well, I got her too. And Troy. So.
I mean, Mina's better than Troy.
It's called a stacked lineup. And you have me. I'm also on that show every day. On my show every day.
I can't wait till the end of the show. Honestly, that's the real. So we have a lot of really fun things to discuss.
Yeah.
But we had a group chat last night talking about today's show, and it got intense. Had a white fight in there over their favorite athletes. It was outstanding. I cannot wait till we get to it at the end of the show because there are a few things in there. I was rereading the conversation last night. It's hilarious, but a couple things jumped out at me. One of the quotes, this is not connected to the fight, but this was said. Remember when Norm Chow was a genius?
Yeah.
that might have been my favorite quote from you guys going at it last night.
That's right.
Remember when Norm Chow was a genius? When Norm Chow got a job as the Titans offensive coordinator off his success with Lendell White.
I love former geniuses. My biggest genius mistake was, I've told you about this one before, when I said that Lamar Jackson should have been the first quarterback taken and he should go to the Jacksonville Jaguars. That was not the mistake part. The mistake was that I wanted to pair him up with the young offensive coordinator mastermind that has since been proven to not be a young offensive coordinator mastermind. What was the guy's name? It's Aaron Rodgers' guy.
Nate Hackett.
There it is. Nate Hackett. I wiped it from my memory because I felt like that was a name that I was not going to need ever again. But I have in a written piece about the draft that Nathaniel Hackett was a smart offensive coordinator. And
I think that the problem is with all those things is there are no geniuses. Like all the things that we think.
Some geniuses.
I don't think there are geniuses in football. I think that the things that really good coaches are good at are not what we think of when we think of genius. They're like good at practice and they're good at stacking talent.
Oh, well, let's get specific. I mean, we'll get to our topics. Like this actually is a really interesting topic to me. So what name somebody and what they're really good at. A couple of people that you think are actual like top tier NFL head coaches.
Yeah.
And what is it that they're good at?
So like Andy Reid probably has the best plays in football, right? Mm-hmm. But he also runs these really physical practices. He also knows exactly how to run a locker room, exactly how to run a training camp. And I don't know where that stuff ends, then the smart stuff begins. Because Matt Nagy ran the same playbook with Mitch Trubisky in Chicago, and it looked like crap. So at some point, having the best play stops working. I understand that having the sequencing and having the head guy, and it was funny, I actually just talked to someone recently about this, and they were talking about the Fangio defense.
Who was it? Who did you talk to?
I can't say. It was off the record.
Oh, okay.
No, it was on background. It was on background, so I can't
gotcha.
say. But it was a smart person because he wasn't a coach, but he was a front office guy. And we were talking about Fangio, and he was like, the thing about hiring the disciples is they're usually worse at innovating. So like if you hire
that was
Fangio's eighth assistant, they're going to be worse at coming up with a new wrinkle, whereas Fangio is going to be able to.
Right. I mean, Fangio's record recently hasn't been all that impressive, but that was going to be my pushback on like taking Andy Reid's playbook. The value isn't in specific playbooks; it's in the ability to adjust and stay on top of things. And I think you're right about practicing and managing a locker room and managing emotions of a team. All that stuff is hugely important to a head coach. I think the scheme. You're not going to. I think it's probably fair to say that you're not going to maintain a schematic advantage. It's just like most people have one or two good ideas. Like in order to maintain a schematic advantage, you have to have the best idea every single season.
Every Sunday. And Sean McVay changed his offense.
I was about to say McVay.
He was
Belichick.
just like, McVay went from Belichick. Went from a 3-4 to a 4-3, even though he popularized the 3-4 because he was like, "Oh, this is too popular. Yeah. I'm done with it. I can't get a nose tackle anymore. We're switching." Like they will wholesale change their. As Kirby Smart said, you cannot outcoach recruiting, and it's true at every level.
Thank you, Charlie.
Yeah.
What game are we playing today?
We're gonna play a game. We're gonna dust off an old SportsCenter game, Fact or Fiction.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you know?
Not did you know? We thought about some Domonique's game, Remember When, which is what led to the Norm Chow thing. Also, speaking of Lendell White, remember when he lost 30 pounds in an offseason just by giving up Patron? That's hilarious.
Remember When is a great game. When we have a slow day, we got to play Remember When.
Because we don't have a slow day.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the offseason, I really wanted to play Remember When only because I wanted to ask you, do you remember when Chris Jones' agent was looking like a mafioso in game one of the season? Like that popped up in my head recently, and I was like, holy that was just last season.
I mean, remember when Tommy DeVito's agent was looking like a mafia guy?
That was embarrassing. That was last year was the season of
he fired him.
Mike Ryan and I and Pablo Torre went to a Miami Rutgers game at Yankee Stadium. It was one of the worst afternoons of my life. It was one of the worst afternoons of my life.
You got two name drops. You don't have one.
Miami lost. It was cold. It was miserable. Miami was playing their third string quarterback, and we're going up. And it was like close enough to where we had to stay for the entire game. We're walking up the stairs, and there's just a huge, huge crowd seeking for autographs from Tommy DeVito's agent, who was just standing there. And I was like, get me the hell out of here. Get me out of here.
All right, fact or fiction?
All right.
Yeah.
Fact or fiction? Kevin Clark looks like he meant to be on a Bitcoin Zoom with the Winklevoss. I'll think that's a fact.
That's not up for me to answer. Oh boy.
You do look like you're trying to scam somebody.
Yeah, I am trying to scam somebody.
It does look like you got a timeshare you want to send me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I can't respond to that one.
Real fact or fiction? We're on the precipice of the NFL season.
Yeah.
When you're listening to this, it'll be one sleep before we got Ravens Chiefs.
One sleep.
Fact or fiction? Xavier Worthy, the rookie wide receiver for the Chiefs, fastest 40 time in combine history, will be the most interesting part of that Chiefs-Ravens game on Thursday night.
Yeah, it's a fact. I keep joking, but it's becoming less and less of a joke that Xavier Worthy is the most important player in football. And the reason being is that if he's what he can be year one, then the season is over. Like, we have to start a new league. And so, yes, that's what I'm looking for. Is like it's not just whether or not he's good. It's also just like how fun he could be. Like, imagine Mahomes, and I've said this a million times, but like Veach used to say that he studied Antonio Brown and Ben Roethlisberger, because the way that Mahomes extends the plays, like, those guys need to be on the same page 50 yards down the field. And it sounds like Hollywood Brown is still dinged up a little bit. Like, Xavier Worthy has the chance to have the type of sort of wasp-esque plays with Mahomes that Tyreek Hill did. And so I think that's the number one thing I'm watching. Like, I love watching Kelsey and Mahomes, but it's a different situation. It's a different, like, Kelsey can just find holes in the zone and play basketball and just sort of like sit there. And Worthy, you're talking about 30 yards further down the field, faster and just crazier, just chunk plays that we haven't seen from Mahomes in a few years.
Kelsey and Mahomes is fun to watch because it's like impressive in their like ingenuity and creativity. It's like, oh, that's not even a real route. But you guys both understood that's what needed to happen in that situation, which is like it's fun to watch in a way, but it ain't like blowing the roof off a defense. And we haven't seen that in Kansas City in a while. So I find that incredibly interesting. I rewatched the game from the championship round last year just to see what the Ravens were trying to do. And it just drove home how important Xavier Worthy is to this team and the offensive line being able to protect, because it was so clear that the Chiefs were trying not to make mistakes on offense, it felt like. Or not trying not to make mistakes, but trying not to take risk on offense. Yep. And the Ravens, the deep safety was in the box most of the game. Like, they were playing the Chiefs as if they had a wishbone offense most of the game, and the Chiefs were not trying to make them pay in any way. This Xavier Worthy addition is the addition that it's so obvious, but if it works out, it's what they wanted Kadarius Toney to be. It's what they wanted MVS to be. Just somebody that's scares a defense over the top. And if he's able to do that, then
CJ Stroud
cancel Christmas.
CJ Stroud, that's exactly a great way to put it. CJ Stroud had a deep passer rating 100 points higher than Patrick Mahomes last year. 100 points. CJ Stroud was tied for the best mark in history on deep passes quarterback rating with Alex Smith. Okay? Alex Smith in that Chiefs offense. Does that mean CJ Stroud is a much better deep passer than Mahomes? No, it doesn't. Does that mean Alex Smith is a much better deep passer than Mahomes? Certainly it doesn't. It was about the offense and the weapons they had at their disposal and how defenses played Mahomes. Like, obviously they're putting a cap on how deep they want to be able to go. Worthy can just blow past that if he's who we think he is. This is all projection. Like, it's so hard until you see pads in live action to project anything. I'm not a big like, oh, this guy's having a great camp guy. Like, everybody, lots of guys have great camps that don't do anything. So it's going to be, the thing I always hear, Foxworth, you probably back me up on this, from players, is that you never know if a guy necessarily has it. You only know if he doesn't have it in the rookie training camp. Am I wrong?
No, I think that's fair. There are exciting things that can happen in the rookie training camp, but oftentimes it don't take much time to know that a guy can't make it. You convince yourself that you'll find a way that you can do this or do that. But it's in the first couple weeks. It's like, oh yeah, he ain't what we thought he was. But you're right. There are guys who have good training camps and then it doesn't pan out. The other addition. Oh, sorry, Charlie. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, but off of that. So when we're watching that game in the Chiefs offense, what are you guys looking for from his route tree? Because we don't want him to just be like a gadget player and just running 9 routes and bubble screens. We want it to look like he's not going to be Tyreek Hill immediately. Right. That's very obvious. But we want him to look like he's going to be a real weapon, because the Chiefs were very prudent and slow working Rashee Rice into the offense last year. Where even week 12, he was playing 60% of the plays, and they realized they needed him. Are there going to be markers that you guys see in this game where like, okay, this is a different offense because this guy is out there?
I'll go first in this one. For me, it's throwing with anticipation and in ways that, like, the amazing thing about the Hill-Mahomes relationship was the screen grabs, where it was like, Mahomes is going to throw this in half a second, and Hill is not only going to get open, but he's going to have 5 yards of separation. Like, the way they were able to know exactly, it's not necessarily a route tree thing. Yeah. It's more about Mahomes knows he can just chuck it down the field, and Worthy will be down there somewhere. And that is a really hard skill to learn in the NFL really quickly, especially with college offenses. College offenses don't do a lot of that. And so that's what I'm looking for. It's just the almost like basketball and grass that those guys can play.
Right. I think my thought is a variation on that is how well he attacks the ball in the air or tracks the ball in the air, which seems like a simple thing that receivers should be able to do. But it's pretty hard to do when you're running. You got a face mask on, your body shaking. There's a guy on top of you to still be able to go up and make a catch, because it only takes a few times for it not to work for defenses to disrespect it. It only takes one time for it to work for the opponents to go into too high for the rest of the damn game. And then the next 4 weeks, which is like you normally watch 4 weeks of film, the next 4 weeks, people are like, oh, we got to be in too high because that Xavier Worthy kid is going to run past everybody and catch the ball. So I think it's that. And the improv point you're right about. And the thing about that is that takes that takes reps normally. And I don't know how they rep that in camp, if they are repping it in camp, but it goes back to your point about coaching. Is that something that you can coach towards and understanding there's simple rules? It's normally short guys. If your route is short, you go deep. If your route is deep, you come down. You work to the side that the quarterback is working to. But Patrick Mahomes can break those rules. And Xavier Worthy needs to understand, go to space, which seems easy and obvious. I imagine that makes pretty good sense, but you have to see it in action. And then there's so go ahead.
I was going to say space is a different question in pros and in college because the athletes are different. And like the thing I've always heard is that any gap on the field in the NFL can normally be a trick. Whereas in college, it's going to be open for the next 15 seconds because of the way the athletes are. Like that's also why it's so hard to play quarterback, is that space is almost fake in the pros and it's real in college.
There's a couple more things that I mean, watching O-line play is not super interesting, but I think that matters, that their ability to hold up to protect Patrick Mahomes. But I also want to go to the other side, right? Like the Derrick Henry addition to the offense really matters a great deal. How aggressive they're going to be in this game with Lamar Jackson. All that is interesting. But how much better do you think, because I think it's no question that Derrick Henry is going to make this team somewhat better. How much better do you think they get? Because they were already great at running the ball.
I think it just gives them an option to not get too cute. What I mean by that is, I think the stat is they faced 38 light boxes in the AFC title game, and they threw against 36 of them. Like, that's really bad. Please don't do that. And I talked to some people in Baltimore about this, and they kind of pushed back on whether or not that was the issue, or how easily they could have run the ball, or a couple plays where they were stuffed and they didn't like it very much and they decided to just get away from it a little bit. I understand all of that, but like, that's why you signed Derrick Henry, is so you don't get too cute. And when we have to run the ball, you run the ball. Like, I heard a phrase one time that like, the mark of a good salesman is when you know the hard sell is coming and you give it anyway and you sell it anyway. Like, that's actually the mark of a good running back. Everybody in the building knows you're going to run it. You run power and you get 5 yards. That's it. And that's Derrick Henry.
You're just going to lean into the scammer bit, huh? Talking about the mark of a good salesman.
Have you ever thought about a reverse mortgage?
I have thought about it one time, and my thought was no. I'm here whenever you need it. This is, I mean, you're tiptoeing around one of the funnier Derrick Henry acquisition explanations that I think people have been using as if it's true, and maybe it is true. It's like, we forgot to run. You know how we're going to remember to run? By getting this monster to stand next to us and scare us. But I also think that there's like huge value to handing him the ball, because he faced loaded boxes and destroys them even when his offensive line is not at its best. I'm looking forward to seeing what this offense is like and preserving Lamar, because Lamar is their best red zone running back. And I don't know that even Lamar would be as good of a red zone running back as that behemoth Derrick Henry.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe Lamar is number one in the NFL in yards before contact, and Henry is number one in yards after contact. I believe that to be the case. So there you go. Good luck, defenses.
That's a correct stat.
Good
Can't
job.
Confirm.
Stat me down. Oh, we're great. I'm so happy to be back in football season.
Oh, it's the best.
We got Kevin Clark dropping names and statting us down. That's
honestly,
nice.
He looks like he could have just been doing a Twitch stream in Belgium talking about Max Verstappen, but football's great too.
Oh man, I don't know how many more of these you have, but I'm looking forward to all of them.
I don't know. I got to see just if they come to me. No, I mean, look, this game is really interesting for a lot of reasons. But like, what's nice about this is a non-panic game. Like the Ravens win football games in September and October. The Chiefs sometimes lose them. I'm just excited to see what it looks like. If Xavier Worthy comes out looking like Deshaun Jackson in the Andy Reid offense, that will rule. Like, it's something like that. Like if Kelsey is taken out of the garage a little bit more than he was last year early in the season, that'll be interesting. But should we move on? More facts, more fictions?
Sure. We're not picking the game.
No, do you want to make a pick?
No, I don't at all.
Every time I've asked you to make a pick ever, you
but I didn't like that you didn't ask me. Okay. I didn't get to say no.
Do you want to make a pick?
No.
Okay.
Right,
Kevin, do you want to make a pick?
Chiefs win.
Ravens win.
31-27. Good game. Great game.
All right. I'm going the other way. Going opposite.
I'm sticking with Kevin.
Thank you.
We'll argue later. Fact or fiction? Okay, this one's a weird one. There's a mystery going on in Cincinnati. Obviously, the Bengals want Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase together forever. They haven't paid Jamar Chase. I know he has 2 years left on his deal, and they're a cheap franchise, and the only person they've paid with 2 years left was Joe Burrow. But it's getting really close to the season, and Jamar Chase is in street clothes. Fact or fiction, Jamar Chase should sit out games until he gets his contract extension.
Fact. I would love it. I mean, I think he won't, but generally, I love the idea of players making. I guess the worst part about this is it's the right thing to do for both sides. Like, how it's not obvious to every team. There are some players that are like, all right, I'm not so sure. Okay, slow play those. And there's some positions. All right, they're not that valuable. Okay, slow play those. This is neither. It's so clear that this player is great and very important to what you're doing long term. It's also so clear that what the price is going to be and that the sooner you sign him, the better off. Like, it feels like a broken record and a waste of time conversation sometimes when it's like, what are we doing? Well, to your question, Chase should sit out. Help the Bengals do the right thing.
I'm torn. I'm going to default to you on players. Like, you know so much about the union. You've been a player. Like, it's easy for me to say, get on out there, buddy. But, like, you're trying to get a level of financial security that I certainly can't imagine, right? And I think that, for me, there's always a scorpion and the frog thing with any franchise, is you always reveal yourself, and it always rears its head what kind of ownership you are and what kind of franchise you are. And I've always thought there's three archetypes of owners. There's owners that know how to win and want to win. There's owners that want to win but don't know how to win. And then there's a third group, and this is bigger than anybody wants to admit, which is they don't really want to win, and anytime they win, it's mostly on accident because they're not giving teams the resources that's needed, and maybe they hit on draft picks or whatever. The Bengals have usually been in that third group for most of the time that the Brown family has owned it. And so I'm not surprised. Like, at first I'm sitting there thinking like, well, I thought you're slow playing T. Higgins so that you could afford Jamar Chase. And it's like, well, they had to give up naming rights so that they could pay Joe Burrow. Like, they're just a different organization. And so I always go, like, I think Marvin Lewis was a miracle worker to make that team as competent as it was for many years. I think he should have gotten another job, by the way. And I think you're seeing what Joe Burrow and Zach Taylor are doing now. And so you're always, I believe that Bengals team can win a Super Bowl if everything breaks right, but it won't be because of ownership. It'll be because they got very lucky on some draft picks. And I just wish they operated differently. And so maybe Jamar Chase helps them, as you said, Foxworth, make the right decision.
This one is so weird, though, to your point, Kevin, because they could win a Super Bowl. They're playing a fourth-place schedule. They're all in now. They know T. Higgins is not in their plans. This is different than the Ayuk situation. Ayuk was offered to the Broncos for Cortland Sutton and picks. Ayuk was offered to the Patriots, to the Steelers, and they had to come together on a contract number. I don't think they're as far off as that situation or the CeeDee Lamb situation. No. Like, we know this is their plan. And so to sort of potentially squander part of that window, when Domonique, you know this, how precious windows are in the NFL, that seems crazy, even for the Bengals.
Yeah, it seems crazy. It seems stupid, and there's no benefit to this is the part that I don't get. I guess to get back to the original question, I said yes, he should sit out, but I really don't know. Like, it doesn't matter.
This was just a proxy.
Yeah, right. But I mean, I guess I think it's worth considering in the holdout in general, how effective it has been for other players in recent history, or ineffective it's been. I don't know why they're not going to pay him, but I also don't know why he should want to show up.
Yeah.
The hardest thing, I think, with players is the way that the public reacts. The fines suck. The missing the play sucks. But I actually think in this situation, we're getting to a place that the public is not going to turn. Like, there'll be some fans who are mad at him, but I think by and large, Bengals fans and sports fans are looking at the Bengals like, what the hell are you doing? Just pay the man what he deserves. And yeah, it's better for you. It's better for you too.
Hey, were there times in your career, Foxworth, where you knew the window was going to close, where you were just like a year out being like, boy, we better win it this year because I'm looking around this locker room and we're going to lose these guys? Or was there more optimism year to year?
Yeah, it's definitely more optimism year to year. When you're in the locker room, you never really see it as like a window is closing. And you're also like caught up in your own window and like where you're going to be the next season and that sort of stuff. But you always think even teams that aren't good, they come into camp thinking that they're in their window, they're going to play well and have a positive season. I can't remember anyone thinking like, oh, this is our last chance. And it might be more prevalent now because of how popular the sport is and social media and all that stuff. Is like you start to hear these things.
Yeah.
I don't remember this much talk about front office stuff, like the machinations of front office behavior. I think modern players might recognize much sooner what's going to happen.
That's interesting because Jason Kelce said that last year when the Eagles were 10-1, that they were miserable because they had lost the Super Bowl and they felt like they had missed their window.
Right.
So I wonder if it is more prevalent now, just because you have to hear about it.
Yeah, I think that might have been more Jason Kelce speaking for Jason Kelce because he knew he was retiring. I do you think anybody in that locker room right now thinks that their window was closed?
I don't know. He's the only source I have on it on this podcast.
Yeah, I think it's a stretch for anybody to think that the window is closed for that roster. That's pretty strong right now. Unless you think the coach is going to sabotage it that much.
It's distinctly possible. All right, next one. Fact or fiction? The Bears should expect to make the playoffs.
Easy fiction. Expect to make the playoffs? I think it's easy fiction.
8.5 is their over-under. You have to pay minus 160 odds to take the over on that.
Anybody who is listening to this show has probably heard all the stuff about how tough the division is and blah, 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 blah. So I'll skip past all of that right to the issues that I think the Bears have. And I did a radio show earlier today in Chicago and was honest with them about how excited I am about Caleb and how exciting that team is. But as I prepare to coach another flag football season, the Bears feel like an awesome flag football roster. It's like where they have three great receivers, two great receivers and one high first-round pick receiver, an awesome electric quarterback, Swift in the backfield, and then on defense they have one great corner and a young up-and-coming corner, two really good safeties, like and some good linebackers. Like this is all the back seven. It's exciting. The question is, how good is their O-line and how good is their D-line? And that's the concerning part for me. You can't expect to make it to the playoffs when you're in that very tough division and you're going to be playing a lot of cold weather games and you aren't sure that your O-line or your D-line can win games for you. That's my concern for them. So I think they could make the playoffs, but to expect it, then you go on top of the rookie quarterback. That's a concern too. But to expect it, I think is such a stretch.
Fact, they should expect it. So I'm looking at the NFC. It's just not deep. It's not deep. Like the NFC East is bad. Like everybody in the NFC East might be on the verge of firing their coach, except maybe the Commanders, only because they just hired the guy. And even that, I'm not even sure that jazzed about it. NFC West, I think the Rams probably make the playoffs. That's one wild card team. Seahawks, maybe borderline. Cardinals don't have much going on. NFC North is obviously hard, but the Vikings have removed themselves from the conversation by not having J.J. McCarthy. I don't think Sam Darnold, just because, this is my thing about Sam Darnold, just because you are failed by your surroundings doesn't mean you're good. It just means you are failed by your surroundings. And then the NFC South is a wash. So who's making the playoffs here?
Yeah, I agree. They're very squarely in the competition. But the question is expect. So they're not going to win the division.
Here's the thing, though. In the locker room, you never think your window's closed. You have to expect to make the playoffs.
Right.
Their window's wide open, and we just learned that.
Cole Kmet is sitting there in his locker saying it's playoff time, baby.
That's fair. I think in the locker room, they definitely think it's playoff time. I guess I misinterpreted the question. But
here's my question. Like, are the Cardinals sitting there being like, here we go, baby. They don't know what's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah?
They are. I promise you that Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. believe that they're going to make it. I promise you they do.
I love that.
You disagree? You've been around. You like to throw these at me because I played, but you've been around the sport long enough. How many locker rooms have you been in, or players have you been around in the preseason where they're like, we're just trying to get better, just build on what we did last year. Let's get to 5 wins this year. Everyone thinks they're going to the playoffs.
I'm going to tell you when it happens. 99% of the time, as you said, as Steve Jobs called it, a reality distortion field, right? Where you're just like, okay, I can see this Freddie Kitchens team. I can see them getting 13 wins, that kind of thing, right? But when it does happen is when you're trying to distance yourself from the team for some reason.
Yeah.
So you'll talk to like the 39-year-old tight end who just won an extra $2 million, and then he'll be there and be like, yeah, I don't know about this team, man, because he's trying to distance himself. And then the other one is when a coach hates a GM or vice versa. And they're like, yeah, I don't know about this one. That's the only time you actually get negativity on like August 10th, is when someone is trying to distance themselves from a looming possible disaster.
Yeah, I'm looking at the wild card, 3 wild card spots, and I don't know why you guys are so confident. Like, I mean, the Falcons could get it. The Packers could get it.
The Falcons are probably going to win the division.
Yeah, well, then Tampa could get it. Then if
maybe.
Yeah, the Rams and the Seahawks are scary. Yeah, Philadelphia and Dallas.
Philadelphia is what? Are you just going to name the cities? Do you have a superlative for them?
I can say a bunch of cities. Tempe, Arizona.
Okay.
What? Camden.
I just
pretty fun.
What we're dancing on, the reason that me and Kevin think that they should expect to do this is because this is an incredibly unique situation for Caleb Williams. Right. And this is someone who we think is far more advanced than a lot of first overall pick quarterbacks who come in. And it's not an exaggeration to say that it's set up. I mean, whatever you think about Eberflus, but talent on the roster.
I like Flus.
In a way, but it's set up in a way for him to succeed really early on. And if it's the best situation we've ever seen for a number 1 overall pick quarterback, and Caleb Williams is that much better than most number 1 overall pick quarterbacks, and he's got Keenan Allen, he's got DJ Moore, he's got Odunze, they've got a defense that's pretty good, and you think their offensive line's okay?
Yeah.
8.5 wins in the NFL, like, that's something they should expect.
Okay. Agree to disagree. Yeah. I think it's something that they will achieve. It's not something they should expect.
Oh, okay. Now it's semantics. So they're going to be surprised when they go 9-8.
I think so. I think it's going to be a surprise.
This is ridiculous.
It's not ridiculous. I
regret finding this basement in Dan Goldberger's house right now.
Dan? Is his name Dan?
Dan, yeah. Dan. Big Eagles fan.
Eagles fan?
Yeah.
And you're in the man's basement saying that Philly's not gonna that they stink. How dare you? The audacity.
I love this. So let's go to one situation where you were talking about a situation where the teams they're not going to expect to make the playoffs.
You need to mitigate your gall.
I promise you that the people in Carolina don't think that they're going to make the playoffs.
That's fair point. That's fair point.
Actually, you think so?
I think the people in the locker room, they're looking at the division, they say it's wide open.
Yeah.
We got Dan Canales. It's wide open.
You think that they're like elbowing Andy Dalton, being like, buckle up that chin strap, buddy. We got to make a run at this thing.
No, Bryce.
This is the fact or fiction. Bryce Young makes it through the season as the Panthers starter.
Fact. Yeah. Without a doubt, fact.
Fact.
First of all, as you said, there's no other good option. They didn't draft anybody. He's coachable. He's not that bad. Like there was a stat. He was like 37th in EPA per play last year. By talent, he's not the 37th best quarterback. He had a crappy situation. He had a coach who didn't want to be there. Dave Canales authored the best quarterback turnaround.
He authored another thing too
last year. He sure did. He really authored on the football field a really good turnaround for Baker Mayfield. It made life easy for him. And I think you're going to see the improved weapons. You're going to see the improved line. Everybody talks about how everybody's making fun of them for overpaying offensive linemen. What do you want, guys? Like the whole thing is to keep Bryce Young upright to see what he has. So like, I'm sorry that I hate this. Like this whole thing. Oh, well, he was $10 million over projection. You're trying to keep your number 1 overall pick quarterback alive. Okay. So they'll spend the extra $10 million, you nerds.
Yeah, I think the way that Charlie worded his fact or fiction leaves room for injury also, which I think you're right. I think if he plays poorly, he's going to stay in there. I think he'll play better than he did last year, which will definitely keep him in there.
Has to.
Yeah, if he gets hit a bunch of times, which is why you overpay for the interior lineman, then he's not in there. I think he does. I agree with you. I think he finishes the year at quarterback. and I think he improves. I'm not sure that he is the long-term answer there or that he's a long-term starter in this league. The funny thing, or not funny thing, but the interesting thing about him is he's such an outlier physically that hypothetically, if it does not go well in Carolina, is he even like a backup quarterback candidate? Like, I feel like he's like a player that's so special or so unique that he's like, all right, he has to be the guy. I'm not sure that people want the 5'10", 180-pound backup quarterback.
So
yeah, you'd have to kind of tailor the offense around.
I'm skipping a lot of steps, but
so much.
It's just an interesting thought.
And part of the Dave Canales thing is also Russell Wilson. He's good, particularly with short quarterbacks.
This started with you saying, "Can you make it this season?" and ended with Foxworth floating that he'll be on the SEC network this time.
I mean, does he have a single tool that you guys like?
I do think he can be accurate with the ball. I mean, like we saw a lot of good throws.
I mean, he's
bucket throws. We saw bucket throws. I think he's got some. Didn't Daniel Jeremiah? Did he comp him to Steph Curry?
Yes.
Do I remember that right?
Yes.
Like there's a little bit of that. That can happen again.
Oh, you seen him shoot? He's a shooter?
I mean, he's got a little. He can hit the bucket.
I mean, I think athleticism is there. He throws on the run well, but I mean, none of it is like blue chip type tools. So yeah, I mean, I get your point. Charlie is a big hater on anybody who is an outlier. Physical outliers, Charlie's big thing.
Yeah, negative physical outliers. Yeah. Obviously, like having a rocket arm. I'm not gonna ding you if you have Matthew Stafford's arm.
Yeah.
No, I just think it's fascinating because Domonique, this is something we've talked about. Like, if it starts going really poorly, their offense was significantly better with Andy Dalton last year. Right. I'm sure the organization will be like, all right, we'll have Bryce Young play the entire season. If we suck, we'll draft another quarterback, and we have a better chance of the first overall pick or high draft pick as a Bryce Young if he's really bad, and we'll see what we have. But at a certain point, like, if you're on that team and you're like, we have our worst quarterback playing, doesn't that become like a really tricky situation to manage?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I don't think that if he is that bad, they're going to move on from him. Yeah. Like, I don't think that'll become a case. But if they're just playing him, I don't know. I think that's a thing that we get caught up in the media and fans get caught up in. It's like racing for the best draft pick. It is really almost impossible to walk in that locker room. You can get away with it 2 or 3 weeks by putting a guy out there that, and I guess the Patriots situation would be an interesting one, but putting a guy out there that you know is bad, it's hard to walk in that building every week and expect everyone to work hard and do their thing when it's clear to us that you don't give a shit. So how do you expect us to give a shit? So I think you get away with it for a couple weeks, and with a young player like this, you're like, we're doing something, and people are okay with that. But if it goes week in and week out, and it's clearly his fault, it's not him under pressure. It's clearly just bad decisions and bad throws. You got a problem on your hands. Especially when Dave Canales is the coach, a guy who does not have like a bunch of credibility. I think you can, when there's a big name coach with a lot of success, people are willing to trust him. And that's not him.
He is a published author.
Authored a book about having a problem on his hands.
I'm sorry. I apologize to everyone listening and viewing. I teed that up just unintentionally too well. Dribbled it off my foot, and it was an alley-oop for Charlie.
I couldn't resist. I mean, I don't know. The Bryce Young thing is fascinating to me. I actually do, because like it just couldn't have gone worse. Yeah. Where, and like what's the gauge of the improvement? Because he's the 37th best quarterback in the NFL. Like, if he's the 29th best quarterback this year, is that enough to?
I think he can be like the 18th best quarterback. A lot of bad quarterbacks.
Watch out, man! Blowing the roof off this thing.
18. The question. 18. He's not going to be third.
It's going to be a poor man's Tyrod Taylor out there. Let's go. Let's build the franchise.
Tyrod Taylor. It sounds like Foxworth doesn't think that Bryce will approach nearly the years Tyrod Taylor's put in.
Oh, no. He's no Tyrod. How dare you? I love Tyrod.
Me too.
He seems like a lovely guy.
He does.
All right. Next one. Fact or fiction? This can go to the entire receiver class, by the way, which has been so vaunted, whether it's the aforementioned Worthy, Harrison, Nabers, Adinze. But fact or fiction, Malik Nabers will have a better rookie season than Marvin Harrison Jr.
Fiction.
Yeah, fiction.
No.
So I don't think Malik Nabers gave him a very good rookie year, and he's going to be the best. If you guys have looked at the receiving numbers since Odell Beckham in New York, it's grisly, man. It is grim, and he'll break a bunch of Giants records and all that stuff. But like, can't block, can't throw. He's going to be the focal point of the offense, and defenses will adjust to that. I think that the Cardinals are in a much better situation with a better quarterback. Drew Petzing is a really good offensive coordinator. I would favor Harrison in that regard. I don't think Nabers is going to be a bust or anything. He's going to be really good. Yeah. It's just when his rookie numbers are going to be not Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, I don't see the argument for Nabers having a better season. I think that Marvin Harrison Jr. is a better player with a better quarterback and a better offense. They both don't have a bunch of players around them to take targets away from him. I guess the only argument is maybe Nabers is facing weaker talent, which I'm not even sure is true. I don't see I obviously think it could happen, but I don't see the argument that it would happen.
I'm going to float this out there. Did Malik Nabers play with a better quarterback last year than this year?
Possibly.
I hope so, as a Commanders fan. I certainly hope so.
Yeah, Marvin Harrison did not have a better quarterback last year and still put up big numbers.
Kyle McCord. Shade getting
tough. Where's he at now?
Syracuse.
He's in the ACC, baby.
Oh, gross. What a terrible conference.
Can I at least devil's advocate this for a second? I'm a huge Marvin Harrison guy as well, because one of the best college... Yeah, Junior. Important distinction. But one of the best college receivers I've ever seen, obviously, is all the physical tools, the size. The reports from camp are that he's not even making spectacular catches because he's so comically open. He doesn't have to. Yeah. But Nabers, a lot of people thought he was the same level draft prospect as Harrison. He's so explosive. Sauce Gardner compared him to Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson for after a joint practice. They unretired a number for him. He's going to be the entire focal point of a Giants offense. A Brian Daboll offense. When you talk about Steph Diggs sort of resuscitating Josh Allen, Steph Diggs also played his best football in a Brian Daboll offense. So it's not crazy to think that a number one X receiver and that type of thing could put up really good numbers. And you look at sometimes these rookie classes of receivers when it's like the AJ Green, Julio Jones type of thing. Sometimes the second receiver can put up better numbers or comparable numbers as a rookie. And yeah, Daniel Jones, not the best guy delivering the football, but his efficiency numbers, if you're just going by the stats, are eerily close to Kyler Murray's in a way that I think would be really surprising, even though we all agree Kyler Murray is a much better player. So that would be the case.
Yeah, that's the tone of your voice told me you don't believe that. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to shout out Rome Odunze real quick, who's going to be really good really quickly. He was on my show a couple months ago, a name drop for it. And we talked a little bit about the play he made against Oregon, where he caught the game-winning touchdown or one of the game-winning touchdowns. And I had him walk me through it. And he said that he didn't put his hands up until really late in the play. He was really, really technical when talking about this. Somebody in the league reached out to me right afterwards, like a week before the draft, and was like, that's a year 5 in the NFL type of savviness. Like, there's not a lot of guys who know how to play the cornerback exactly like he was describing. And then, kind of incidentally, he said that the number one guy he wants to model himself after is Keenan Allen. Well, then you get drafted with Keenan Allen, and presumably, as long as there's no Rodgers-Favre thing going on, Keenan Allen is helping him become the next Keenan Allen. And so I think there's a lot there, and I think there's a lot to work with. DJ Moore is so good; he's probably going to eat into a lot of those numbers. But I think Odunze is going to flash a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Rome Odunze is going to be good. He's not in this conversation, though, for these big numbers. And I think making a case for Nabers is cute.
Yeah,
but I think that's all you're doing is making a case.
Well, so I just wanted to lay out why it was a question of why you could talk about it.
And the Steph Diggs stuff, like he also had Josh Allen, who is
Keon Coleman. Maybe he'll be in the conversation, or Xavier Worthy,
right?
The quarterbacks.
No, my point is that the difference between Josh Allen and Daniel Jones is vast, and I do think the quarterback difference.
They're both tall whites.
that's about where the similarities start. They both are pretty athletic too, but deceptively so. But the Kyler Murray, healthy Kyler Murray in this situation is going to put up big numbers. Even if Kyler Murray has mistakes, they're not going to cost Marvin Harrison Jr. I think, it'll be interesting to see, but I'd be shocked. And, this is what I really want to say. The beginning, you said there were some people in the draft that had them like comparable coin toss.
Yeah.
Those people are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
They're just different types of players. Like,
I think we do this with every draft. Is there's always a generational guy, and then when you're not a like close to the best player in the draft, and then after 6 months, somebody randomly is like, there's some people in the league who say it's a 1A 1B situation, and then we just talk about it like that for the following 6 months, and then it turns out we were normally correct the first time.
We got to. We as people in this business, I understand how it works, and then words lose meaning like generational. And there's always the guy who goes like 38th. And then someone on the set is like, I talked to a coach that this is the best player in the draft. Well, no, I don't think so because he just went 38th. Oh, my gosh. Get from behind the curtain. Are we ready for you guys to fight yet? Not yet.
We have to talk about college ball. Oh, no, we have one more Fact or Fiction.
Fact or Fiction, Miami football is back.
Oh, yes.
Mario, it's funny. I knew Mario was media savvy when 2 years ago they were like, is the U back? And his line was back to work. So that's what we say now. We say the U is back to work. We're back to
that's
working.
Gross. That's what we say now?
That's what we say as a team. We're bringing it in tight. The problem is that Miami had the swagger without the work. And, that's the one thing that when you listen to the Glory Days guys, the Ed Reeds, the Andre Johnsons, they just work their off all the time. And then under worse coaches, it became like, we're going to do the dancing stuff that they did in the 80s, except we're going to be 6th round practice squad guys instead of the 8th pick. And that's where it starts to get embarrassing. And it's not embarrassing anymore.
Yeah, I think that's the culture of Miami. And Miami, when I was in high school, was the coolest thing in all of sports. Like, you wanted to be a part of that. You wanted to be associated with that. But the culture of Miami was like blown up to be how flashy they were. But underneath all of that culture, or all of that flash, was a bunch of hard work. I hope they're back because they're already doing the fun stuff.
Yeah, dapping up Florida recruits.
Oh my gosh,
do you love
was
that?
Incredible.
Did you guys love that?
I loved it.
Love that? Hate that? No, I
mean, Kevin had to love it because he's
it was right in front of Mike Ryan and I, and so we could see right down. And I was surprised. So Florida has a couple of recruiting sections, but the good recruits and the ones everybody was talking about, all the articles written about a kid named DJ Pickett, who's a 5-star out of Tampa. Florida sat him right next to the visitors' tunnel. And right in front of the away fans. And so it became a Miami recruiting trip for him. And I don't know why Florida did that. And so it was only natural. And also his cousin plays on Miami. So it was only natural. And here's where the flare-up started. For some of the players, including his cousin's roommate, to come over and say hello. So there were 2 staffers, including one named Katie Turner, who's the head of recruitment. I think she came from Georgia, who started screaming at them. And actually, I believe, told them to shut up because one of the players, if you look at the video, Mish Powell says, come to Miami. And then a couple others say, don't come to Florida, all that stuff. And so it's really just like a setup error for Florida that you would have these kids right next to the tunnel. It was misreported as like Miami players went out of their way to recruit. Miami players were just trying to walk off the field, and then they dapped up a bunch of kids who wanted to say hi to
walk off the field and mind their own business.
And then I think what happened was that then the Florida staffers like everybody get in the locker room, and then the players came out afterwards. I've never seen anybody talk about this. To do like a curtain call. And Mario started like pointing at Cam Ward and pointing at Mark Fletcher, and they turned into a party. And I'm 95% sure they did that just so the recruits could join in on this field party. Like, I don't think they cared about me and Mike Ryan. I think they cared about DJ Pickett and Vernell Brown.
I appreciate that you're trying to sugarcoat this and defend your team, but they don't need defense.
Cool,
if they walk to the other side of the field away from their locker room, if they went out of their way to find these recruits and then start actively recruiting them, I would have thought that was cool too. Like, I don't get why anybody's like, well, they're trying to explain how it's okay what they did. Yes, it's okay. You beat that team's you can do what you want at that point. If you want to use your time to go talk to their recruits, then go talk to their recruits. Florida, don't put them right there. Move them out of there or win. Or win. Like, I don't get the argument that it's like classless or whatever. Like, that is.
Was anyone actually arguing that?
No, I mean,
there were people who, first of all, the Florida staffers who were literally pushing the Miami players were arguing it, obviously.
That's good recruiting.
And then there were a lot of people saying, like, well, she was just doing her job and protecting the recruits. Literally, that was how it was phrased on Twitter. Protecting them from what? Going to a better school? Like, I was surprised at how much heat that got on Twitter. I agree with Foxworth. It looked cool and was cool.
Yeah, I love it. Anyway, let's get to the beef.
What do you think of Cam Ward, Foxworth?
I was about to ask, what's the optimism with Cam Ward with you guys?
So I know someone who was on the field, and they said that I talked to them after the game, and on the first drive of the game, someone said to the guy, they said, "We're going to win," and they said, "Why?" And he said, "Because Cam Ward is the calmest person in this entire stadium, and if you watch it, he played like that. Like he would just hang back there 6-7 seconds, always scanning the field, finding the guy. Like I'm sure, and there was an interception where he threw across his body." But there were also a handful of touchdown passes and huge chunk plays where he threw across his body. So I would be surprised, frankly, if there was a more exciting player in college football this year. I think there's probably going to be mistakes like that, or he fumbles a lot. I think he's had 46 fumbles in 4 years at Incarnate Word in Washington State. So there's a lower floor maybe when you try to take those chances. But I think he's probably going to be a Heisman candidate and probably be the most exciting guy in the country this year.
Yeah, I mean, most excited guy in the country. I guess I don't know about that, but generally everything else you said, I agree with. Like the big talk about Miami right now is how easy their schedule looks and how easy it's gotten. Now we don't even think Florida State's any good because they started their season with 2 losses. That was the one hurdle on the schedule.
The funniest thing in the world. Florida State, after all that whining, starting off 0-2, bring in DJ Uiagalelei, who's just bad everywhere.
Awful. Yeah, he's not good.
It is.
He's good. He's good for the internet.
He's great for the internet, but they didn't recruit high school well enough, and you can't rely on the portal. You cannot rely on the portal. They brought in, same thing Florida did. I knew Miami was going to destroy Florida because Florida was terrible last year, and the guys they brought in the portal, which is how you augment year over year. High school recruits won't do it year over year. Freshmen aren't good. They brought in a bunch of guys who couldn't play. They brought in Ivy League transfers. They got in guys who weren't starters in their previous team. Florida State, not the same. They brought in better players, but it was still unproven talent. Marvin Jones Jr., who was not a starter at Georgia. Earl Little, who was not a starter at Alabama. Hope is not a strategy. Just because you get different guys doesn't mean they're better. And that's a mistake these guys are making in the portal. Florida State was always going to be bad, so was Florida. You cannot rely on the portal every single year.
Okay, Dabo.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can't go the other way either.
You got to augment. You got to fill holes with the portal. High school recruiting determines your floor. Portal determines your ceiling.
Yeah.
Well, no one had a higher ceiling in college football than Reggie Bush.
Oh, you want to hear I'm going to break the sanctity of the group chat here.
Okay, all right.
So
break it.
Here's the discussion was, we were talking about how cool the University of Miami was. Domonique was saying how it was the sickest thing ever during that run. I was like, yes, the only school that had similar levels of coolness, although very different. It was glitz and glam. Was that USC dynasty?
Yeah. And I said not even close.
And I said Reggie Bush, and Kevin Clark said Devin Hester was a better college player than Reggie Bush, but he wasn't just supported by a soft conference.
That's not what I said.
Reggie Bush's only real highlight came against Fresno State, and we don't talk about Devin Hester's return against Duke that way.
So. Let me clarify. I'm not backing down from that. What I said was, I did not say Devin Hester was a better player than Reggie Bush. Did not say that. Said he was a better returner. And I said what I did say was that Reggie Bush's most memorable individual performance ever was against Fresno State, which is a red flag. And Charlie statted me down and talked about his yards per carry in his career, which is great, and lower than Melvin Gordon and Felix Jones.
8.7 yards per carry his junior year when he had 1,740 yards, 16 rushing touchdowns, and was a completely dominant force.
Sat me down.
Who do you think had more return yards in their 3-year college career, Devin Hester or Reggie Bush?
Total return yards?
Yeah. Just if we want to take out the fact that Devin Hester couldn't play offense or defense in college.
Well, I'm not comping them. I was comping them as returners. Devin Hester is in Canton, and Reggie
Yeah,
Bush
but
is no longer with
Danny
Fox.
Werfel was a better college quarterback than Patrick Mahomes.
He's ready for all your takes. He's ready for all your takes.
That doesn't
ready
mean
for all
that,
your takes.
Devin Hester was a better college player than Reggie
Devin
Bush.
Hester was sick in college. He returned the opening kick against Florida. He had a couple called back.
Reggie Bush was also sick in college.
Thing I've ever seen. No, but I'm saying, and then he had a better NFL career.
No, objectively, better NFL player. He's a Hall of Famer.
Yes.
But college football, Reggie Bush was a joke how good he was.
Well, they played different positions, but at the one skill they were good at, Devin Hester was better at.
It's my cousin.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I would say if the skill was running in the open field, Reggie Bush was better at that too. And breaking tackles.
Miami has better guys than that. Would you rather have prime Willis McGahee or Reggie Bush?
Okay, that's my take I brought up. Pre-injury McGahee.
You're the one that broke this. You're the one that broke the sanctity of group chat. Now it's all on the table.
I stand for pre-injury McGahee. He might have been.
Thank you.
He was unbelievable. It's like Booby Miles.
I'm not saying Reggie Bush was bad. I'm just saying I think that at the time,
a little bit overrated is what you're going.
No, not even a little bit. But what I'm saying he was overrated. But only in the sense that like when we were watching him, I think we were processing him, and I was guilty of this too, as a like once in a lifetime open field runner. Like we were talking about space earlier, right? And I did not. Looking back on it, I think he was a worthy Heisman Trophy winner, great college player. I don't see the history that I saw when I was watching him in real time. Prisoner of the moment. I was a prisoner of the moment.
He is a once-in-a-lifetime college football player. He's the best college running back between OJ and now.
I mean, Barry Sanders.
That's a good point. Barry Sanders, too.
The only thing that I cared about, I bailed out of this argument, but I enjoyed it. Only thing I cared about was making sure Charlie understood that Miami was cooler than USC. Like,
thank you.
Unequivocally, they were cooler than USC.
Definitely.
Okay, cool.
I said it was the only one that was close, and that was
not even close. Not even close. I wouldn't even say, like, and maybe this is age stuff. Like, I feel like Florida State in the 90s was cooler than USC. Peter Warwick?
I love Peter Warwick, but
Warwick Dunn?
No.
Charlie Ward.
Also,
I'm saying names. I'm saying names.
I was a newborn.
Peter Bolware.
I was a newborn when Charlie Ward was playing quarterback.
That's what I'm saying. I think that's the difference is age. And you were in high school, and I was already in college when that was happening, so it wasn't as cool.
I was in 8th grade, and Reggie Bush was dating Kim Kardashian, and Matt Leinart was dating the girl from the Hills, and I was like, it's cool.
Not to talk about sports on the sports show, but I do want to say about both of these teams something that has been brought up to me a couple of times, which is that teams like USC and Miami are actually probably going to benefit a little more than we think in the portal era, because these guys are becoming, if they're not already, professionally minded. Right. And with like remote classes and stuff, you don't really have to step foot on campus ever. And so these guys are not looking at what the college bars are for Thursday night. They're not. They're looking at where they can live with the $1.2 million they're making, and if they're the absolute superstars, right? And I think you're going to see more guys say, hey, let's go to Miami, let's go to USC, let's go to Austin, let's go, I mean, we're seeing now, not that it's similar, but like Georgia Tech's getting some great recruits. Like, are we sure, College Park, Maryland, are we sure that these guys aren't being like, it'd be really cool living in Atlanta with $1 million. That would be cool at age 19. And so I just think metro areas, as the campus environment becomes less and less important because you're just not even stepping foot on campus. You're living in off-campus apartments mostly.
You're not getting any votes from the middle of the country. You are not getting any votes.
But
I'm not trying to get. I'm just trying to tell you why Miami's good.
I mean, I think you're right. It's not going to be drinking a moose juice at Mr. Moe's in Coconut Grove anymore.
How'd you know that?
Charlie. So that's one thing you need to know about Charlie. Charlie knows about all the hole in the walls and bars in every city.
Moe's is no longer.
Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of something less interesting, and I can't.
Sean Taylor and Ed Reed were better return men in college than Devin Hester.
Now we're into action.
When Ed Reed's stripping his own teammate to beat BC on that return, Sean Taylor on the block punt.
Did not beat BC. They were winning.
Okay,
that was
seal
to clinch the game. They were winning that game.
I mean, Ed was a pretty good returner.
It was sick.
If he dedicated himself to returning, he
might have any sort of broken play on like an interception or a block punt, and Sean Taylor's like juking out two people and running a 4.3 at 6'2", 230.
Definitely better than Reggie Bush.
We're just stacking guys better than Reggie Bush.
All right. I think we can let you go now. Tell Dan I said thanks for letting us use his basement, and you have yourself a good football kickoff. You doing anything special for the first game?
I am going on Pablo Torres' show tomorrow. Is that special?
Nope.
You playing golf anywhere?
No, I don't have time to play any golf.
It's tough. Fall golf in New York sounds lovely.
No thanks.
It is lovely. I would love
All right,
to
we're
do
getting the
it
hell
one
out of
day.
here. All right,
It's
thank
called
you
working.
for being with us, my friend Kevin Clark. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you to all the great producers. I love you, Parville. We out.
This is the Domonique Foxworth Show.